Hi there, this is Colin McGarry with Walking D-Day, and today we're into the liberation of Flers on the 17th of August. Now the 11th Armoured Division, they landed on Juno Beach on the 13th of June. They were involved in Operation Epsom, then Goodwood, and then Operation Bluecoat. Bluecoat started at Commonwealth on the 31st of July. On the 16th of August, the British troops were near Flers. The 11th Armoured Division was being held up at Pont de Verre, where the Germans are carrying out the rearguard action to slow them down. And there were British troops at LAnde Patry. So from LAnde Patry, Flers was visible just a few miles away. There was a British reconnaissance party led by Captain Alexander. They met a French resistance here at this crossroads between LAnde Patry and Saint-Paul, and he offered to lead them into Flers. Now they weren't sure whether they were leading them into a trap, but they decided to trust him. He was unarmed, the Robert Duguay, the Frenchman's name was, and the reconnaissance party, they just had rifles. So they set off towards Flers in their scout car. So on the 16th, there's a Pont de Verre, which is between Condé-sur-Noireau and Flers. The Germans were holding a rearguard action. There were 3 companies of grenadiers and artillery. This held up the British advance, and so they didn't get into Flers until the 17th of August. On the 11th of June, just after D-Day, some Canadian prisoners were being marched into Saint-Georges-de-Groseilliers, and several American airplanes turned up and strafed the column, and 15 Canadians were killed. There's a monument here to commemorate that. A few days before D-Day, there were leaflets dropped over many towns in Normandy, inciting the people to move. But as the invasion hadn't happened, and the front line being a long way away, people decided to stay. But on 7:30 in the afternoon, on the 6th of June, there were bombers, B-17s came and bombed Flers, and then an hour later there was more bombs. 98 people were killed in that bombing raid, and Flers was destroyed by 70% by that bombing, and others later on. So Captain Alexander and his team of reconnaissance with Robert Duguay arrived in Flers from this road from LAnde Patry. Now they were from the 3rd Division. They carried on into town and left their armoured car at the Place Centrale, or Central Square, which is now Place de Gaulle. So Robert Duguay had led Captain Alexander into town in their scout car. Now they left it here at what was called Central Place, or Place Centrale, is now Place de Gaulle. And they went on foot. Now they went down a road here, which was Rue de la Planchette, which used to join this square. But as all these buildings were bombed, they've redone the roads, and there's just a little passage here. Now the passage is called Passage Marcel Poitiers. He was a veteran of the First World War, and during the bombing he helped recovering bodies from the ruins. So they named this passage after him. So coming down Rue de la Planchette, going very carefully because they worried about German snipers or even collaborators who might take a pot shot at them. They were heading to Place Saint-Jean, which is by the church over there. Now this house here, the doctor lived in there, and during the bombing the house had been a bit shaken up, and one day after the bombings the doctor, who was a bit overweight, he was in his bathtub, which is on the first floor, and with the bath being full of water and the weight of the doctor, he started sinking through the floor. So they got to Place Saint-Jean by this church, which is just by the road from Paris, Route de Paris. Now Robert Duguay didn't have the correct information about the sighting of the German gun, and when they showed themselves at this junction, the gun fired at them because it was sighted up there by this cemetery. So after taking cover, they dashed across the road, and he led them down to Rue du Champ de Foire, or the Market Street Road. They got to the back of the cemetery. Robert Duguay led them along the Rue du Champ de Foire, or the Marketplace Street, into the back of the cemetery. And they came through the cemetery to get around behind the German gunners. So they attacked the gunners from the rear. The German gun was pointing down the Route de Paris and had a great view right down to the centre of Flers. Up until 1841, the main road into Flers from this direction was the Route d'Atis, which was quite windy. 1841 they built this road, nice and straight and wide, so it gave the Germans a good position at the end of the road where they could fire right down to the central place. There were some more British troops arrive after the reconnaissance troop. There's some German vehicles trying to escape from Flers, and they fired on them, and they crashed into the wall over there and caught fire. You can see the wall has been repaired. On the 17th of August, Captain Mayhew of the 3rd Division entered town from the road from LAnde Patry, and at the roundabout Le Lièvre they faced some German opposition, but that was soon swept away. They also discovered a Canadian pilot who'd been hidden by the French resistance. So they started moving up what was then called Rue de la Banque, or Bank Street, and is now called the road of the 11th Armoured Division. They're a bit wary of all the doors being closed, and windows are open. Now the windows are probably open because they've been smashed by the bombing. So they advanced slowly, and then the doors started to open, and the civilians came out cheering them. Now this fine house across the road was where the mayor lived, Maurice Duguay, not to be confused with Robert Duguay, the resistant, who led the reconnaissance team into town on the 16th. Maurice Duguay was the mayor. He came out with champagne that he'd hidden in the garden to keep it safe from the Germans. So this part of Flers was still intact, except many windows broken. Past this crossroads, the houses are in ruins. The Germans had cleared the rubble off the road, and they'd knocked down many walls that risked falling down anyway. But past there it was ruins. Now there was a lot of weaving industry in Flers. This building was the head office of one of these weaving companies. They didn't weave in there, but they stocked the material. Now that building behind me was a hotel called the Lion d'Or. Lion d'Or means golden lion, and they'd have signs up at places like that with a golden lion. But it's a play on words. Lion d'Or is like saying lit, which is bed, and one sleeps. So when people couldn't read, Lion d'Or was a sign of a place where there was a hotel where you could sleep. Anyway, the Germans took that hotel as their Komandatur. There's a strange piece of decoration inside, which we'll go and see. Now the swastika decoration on the floor is nothing to do with the Nazis. It's a sign that comes from India. So they just happened to have that decoration there. Of course, no doubt it pleased the Germans that there was that on the floor. Now just opposite this road, which is Rue de la République, there was a Hallo Blay, which means grain store or grain market. It's changed a lot. It was a circle. The southern end of the circle is still there at the end. The rest of it has changed because of the bombing. Now the Germans used the grain market as a fuel store, and the resistance told the Allies about it, and they bombed it on the 6th of June, but the Germans had moved the fuel away by then. We've just come from the Hallo Blay, and down there is the covered market, which still works as a market today. This church, Saint-Germain, was replaced the previous church in 1926. The other church was oriented, which means the altar was facing east, and this church is not. The altar is facing west. But it was very badly damaged during the bombing. They've repaired it, but the stained glass windows weren't replaced. Now, there used to be some houses here, and there was a passage between them with some steps going up to the parvis of the church. And to make the roads wider, they knocked down 5 of them. So there's just that one still there, and these steps going up towards the church. See, these buildings are typical post-war architecture, just like Villa Bocage and other towns that are badly damaged. In the cemetery at Flers, there's some Commonwealth war graves. These 3 died on the 9th of June. Royal Army Service Corps, Glasgow Highlanders, and another Glasgow Highlanders here. Not sure how they managed to be buried here if they died on the 9th of June. There's also lots of French graves, many from the First World War, like these 2. And some from the Second World War. Just next to the Pont de Verre, there's a memorial been set up to the 11th Armoured Division. Black Bull research team have been trying to collect as many photos as they can of the 1,960 men who died in Europe. On the 17th of August 2024, there was a ceremony here and a commemoration in town of the liberation of Flers.